Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to talk about readings in law school because it's probably what you're going to spend most of your time doing. So hopefully I can shed some light on readings in law school for you so you feel a little bit more prepared. So let's get into it. So one of the main things I think people wonder about readings in law school is whether or not you have to do all of them. Now, I have talked to people who don't do all of the readings in law school and they've done just fine. I personally have done basically all of my readings in law school. I never really thought that there was an option. I never felt like I could skip doing a reading. I just feel like it gives you so much more context for what you're going to be learning in class that day, and I just think it helps you understand what you're learning and you're going to be tested on it. So personally, I prefer to do all of the readings, but you can decide for yourself if you want to do that. But I personally would recommend doing all of the readings. I don't know about these people who haven't done all of the readings. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. Personally, that scares me, but if other people have done it, then obviously it's possible. Everyone does things in their own way. One thing that I can say is if you are going to be doing the readings, don't fall behind, because you have so much reading to do in law school. For every class, you have just an exorbitant amount of reading to do. And if you fall behind, you will have a really hard time catching up again, or you won't catch up at all. If I have ever missed a reading, it's really hard to go back and do it because you're like, well, I have so much reading to do, and this class now that I had to do this reading for is already over. So it's not going to benefit me now for the future to read it now. So you kind of end up putting it off, and then it ends up being at the end of the semester when you have to do all those readings, which is when you should be studying and reviewing things, not learning new things. So I really, really, really recommend not falling behind in your readings because it will be so hard to catch up. If you do happen to fall behind in your readings, because it inevitably happens to everyone at some point, I would recommend doing the readings for whatever class you are supposed to be going to. Let's say you have contracts twice a week and you did not do the readings for your class yesterday and you have it again tomorrow. So you didn't do the readings for yesterday. Instead of doing those readings now, you should do the readings for tomorrow and make sure that for the next class you are prepared, because otherwise you're going to be behind one class every single week and you'll never be on track, so you'll never know what's going on. So if you do fall behind, just keep moving forward. Do the readings to prepare you for the next class and worry later about catching up on the ones that you missed. Just try and get back on track as quickly as possible. Another thing that's kind of related to that is about being strategic. So sometimes in law school you just don't have time to do everything. So if you, for example, have 2 sets of readings to do for tomorrow, and in one class maybe the professor does the Socratic method, which is cold calling, so they will call your name and ask you a question, and in the other class they don't, it's probably going to make more sense if you only have time to do the readings for one of the classes to do the readings for the class that you might get called on in, because it will save you probably a lot of embarrassment, and then you can catch up on the other readings later. So sometimes you do have to be strategic. If you have readings to do and you also have an assignment to do for tomorrow that's not finished, probably do the assignment first and not the readings, and save those until after, or just don't do them. So you really don't want to find yourself in that situation too often, but it happens, so really be strategic and use your time wisely because you don't have a lot of spare time. Another thing that you should do when you're doing your readings is take notes. That's the hardest part about readings because they would go by so much more quickly if you didn't have to take notes on them. So you can take notes in whatever way you prefer. I prefer personally when I'm reading a case, if it's a shorter case, I typically will read the whole case and underline the things that are important, and then after I've finished reading it, I go back and type up those notes so that I have them on my computer in my big collection of notes for that class. If it's a longer case, then sometimes I do 2 pages. So like when you open the book, those 2 pages that are showing, I will read those through and underline them. And then once I'm done that, I will go back and type up all those notes. You just have to find whatever works for you and the quickest way that you can get it finished. That's just what I typically do. It's the quickest way for me to do it, but you can kind of find your own style once you start reading cases more and once you kind of get into the groove. I can do a video on how to read a case if that would be something that you guys are interested in, but just a couple of tips for right now. When you're reading a case and you're trying to pick out what's important, just think about why you have been asked to read that case. So what class are you reading it for? If it's for your contracts class, then focus on the contractual aspects of the case as opposed to maybe some tort issues or property issues. Just really think about why you're reading the case. Or if it's in your constitutional law class and you are discussing freedom of expression at that time, and that's the heading under which that particular reading is on your syllabus, then that's probably why you're reading the case. You're reading it to look at the freedom of expression issues. So think about that when you're doing the readings, and it will kind of keep you focused, and it will be easier for you to pull out the important points. The other tip I have, which is something that surprisingly is more difficult to remember than I would have thought. I forget this all the time, but look at the headings. In cases, there's often headings, and they can be very helpful for kind of focusing you on what you're supposed to be reading about and what you're supposed to be getting from that particular section of the case or that particular part of the reading. So really look at the headings and pay attention to them, because they also can be very helpful when you're doing your readings. So I think that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said, I can do a video on how to read a case if that would be helpful to you, but hopefully these little tidbits of information about readings will give you at least a little bit of insight into readings in law school. You're going to spend a lot of time doing them, so you really want to have a good strategy and have a little bit of idea of what you're doing before you start your readings. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!